Ka tangi te titi, ka tangi te kaka, ka tangi hoki a hao ti he Māori ora. The seabird cries, the mountain parrot cries, even I cry out, behold the breath of life. E na mana, e na reo, e ra rakatira mā tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Tēnei tu raro e tu maru o ka mana whenua, ka te mamoi waitaha, kaitahu, no mai, haramai welcome. I stand here under the umbrella of the people of this place, ka te mamoi, waitaha, kaitahu, and welcome you here. Ki te whare, tu nei, tēnā koe, tu tonu, and to the house that stands here, may you stand forever. And usually that's followed by the health and safety warning that if there is some doubt that the house is going to continue to stand here forever, then please follow the instructions that you were given before. E ne mate haere hoki atu rā ki te pō. And I think particularly at this time, just past Matariki, let us remember those that have passed, and may they move to the darkness and be safe forever. So, tēnā koutou katoa, ko waiau, who am I? No Otapoti ahau, ko Katarani te iwi. That's appropriate tonight. I'm Scottish of background. Hei kaimahi aha te wharewananga o tako whakaihu waka, and I work here at the University of Otago ko Richard Blakey takoinga. I'm Richard Blakey, Deputy Vice-Chancellor Research and Enterprise here at Otago Whakaihu Waka, the University of Otago, and it's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome you here tonight for this Harraways Visiting Professor Lecture by Professor Paul Singh. Welcome, and welcome to you. It is my great pleasure to welcome you here for this lecture, and also to thank our distinguished guests from Harraways who have come along tonight for both your presence here to support the visiting lecturer, but also for your continued and ongoing support of this very important initiative to bring leading thinkers from around the world here to Otapoti, Dunedin, to work with us in an academic environment, but also to support things that are of interest and relevance to you. So in particular, to Ross Hudson from the board, tēnā koe Ross, to Henry, the Chief Executive, and Peter, the Marketing Manager, tēnā kōrua, and to Duncan, the Product Developer, who's here, tēnā koe, welcome, and welcome to you all. I do bring some apologies, firstly from our Vice-Chancellor, our new Vice-Chancellor, Honourable Grant Robertson, who gives his apologies. He's just had his first University Council meeting, so is in recovery from that, and has some business to attend to. Also, very sincere apologies from Pro Vice-Chancellor Division of Sciences, Professor Richard Barker, who would have very much liked to have been here, but he's not well tonight. Also, to welcome to members of the Department of Food Science, and thank you for your role in organising this event, to other members of faculty, to students, to members of the public, to people all around the world, and even people in the future who may be watching this event. No mai, haramai, welcome to you all. The format for the event is I'm going to welcome the speaker. We are then going to have the distinguished lecture, and I'm then going to engage in some Q&A, so I'll try and get out of the way so we can get on with that. That will involve questions that are being able to be delivered online. So if you're online, you should have had instructions. Are there any special instructions, Indra, for? Okay, so if you're online, you should have an email address to deliver those questions to. We'll go back and forward. We'll try and repeat the questions. If you're in the audience and you've got a question, just wait till the microphone gets to you. Otherwise, we'll be repeating your question and misrepeating your question many times on the way through. There's no other housekeeping, I believe. So it's now my great pleasure and privilege to welcome Dr. Singh to deliver his lecture on framing the future of our food systems in the area of climate change, which is particularly apposite because you come from UC, where you're currently in your home territory under what is a new term for me, a heat dome. But that heat dome, I think significantly, has already delivered record temperatures to many parts of inland US, including in California, Nevada, Arizona, and may, in fact, if it is not already, delivered the hottest recorded temperature ever on planet Earth. And I think we have to, it's not a thing to celebrate, but it is a thing to recognize that we are living in an era where climate change and variability is with us. It is evident to all of us here in Otapoti, and also in particular in those areas of the world that are subject to very, very extreme changes of temperature. So how do we manage to feed ourselves and our future selves in the face of these changes in our weather systems, in our climate systems? It is our particular pleasure to have you here tonight to talk us through some of the systems and the technologies we might need. You come from a particularly distinguished background, but also with significant knowledge of New Zealand, having spent several of your sabbatical periods here with the RIDIT Corps that we are proudly a member of. Largely based at Massey University. You're currently a RIDIT Fellow, but in 2003 you were a William Evans Fellow here at the University of Otago, so you know us well, so welcome back. Paul is a distinguished professor, emeritus of food engineering at the University of California at Davis, receiving his degrees in agricultural engineering from Punjab Agricultural University, University of Wisconsin-Madison, and Michigan State University. Dr. Singh's research involves using computational modelling to improve food processes, design novel food processing equipment, conserve energy and water use in food processing, improve the shelf life of foods, and study food digestion for improved bioaccessibility of nutrients in the human body. As well as having extensive and well-cited publications, he is a Fellow of the Institute of Food Technologists, the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineering, and the International Academy of Food Science and Technology. He received the Kishida International Award in 2007 and the 2013 Massey Ferguson Gold Medal for Education from the American Society of Agricultural and Bioengineering, and in 2008 was elected to the US National Academy of Engineering, a very, very prestigious election. In 2010, the Institute of Food Technologists awarded him the Nicholas Appert Award, the highest food science award in the United States. In 2015, he received the World Agricultural Prize from the Confederation of Higher Education Associations for Agricultural and Life Sciences. In 2018, he received a Doctor of Science honoris causa from the University of Guelph in Canada. Dr. Singh serves on the Food and Nutrition Board of the US National Academy of Sciences and is a co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Food Engineering. So it is my great pleasure to welcome Professor Paul Singh to present his 2024 Harraways Public Lecture. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And greetings to everyone, those of you who are, of course, present here in person and those who are online. I would first like to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to Harraways for making it possible for me to be here this evening. I am deeply honored by this recognition and humbled in following the footsteps of the past Harraways professors, Professor Mark Hendricks and Professor Ricky Yada. Now, I was actually supposed to be here in 2020, right? 4 years ago. But because of COVID lockdown, and of course, dates got changed. I was looking in my computer for my talk in 2020, and I did find it, but then I realized that in 4 years, things have changed quite a bit. So I did spend a little bit more time to change and talk about some of the issues that are becoming quite critical for almost everyone around the planet. Certainly the food is, of course, extremely important. and the climate change, which is impacting almost everyone around. And as I was mentioned, when I left Davis on that day, it was about 40 degrees Celsius, and then temperatures went higher. So I'm very pleased to be here in very nice temperatures here in Dunedin. I will take this next 30 or 35 minutes and talk about our modern food system, some of the complexities that are there, also multiple challenges that the food system is facing. We will talk about circular bioeconomy. I'll get into a little bit more detail on that. And in the talk, I will also note some of the opportunities for young professionals who are in the industry as well as in academia, students who are working on research in some of these topics. So if we walk into a grocery store, this was in Davis, very similar here in Dunedin, you note that there's certainly abundance of food that is on display. The main pillars of the food system is to produce safe, affordable, nutritious, and plentiful food. In a typical grocery store, you may have 30, 40,000 items. And of course, if you pick up a can of tomatoes, it's through a supply chain that can of tomatoes appeared on that grocery store shelf. The farm to fork, as we often talk about, starting with tomatoes being grown in the field. In fact, this is only about 3 miles from where I live. California, Northern California is quite a bit of tomato growing goes on there. So those tomatoes shipped into the canning plants where they go through a certain process, and then of course you have the shelf-stable product in a can. So if we look at this farm to fork that we often talk about, of course it starts before that production. There is that pre-production part. That is where the research goes on, whether it's in the academia or in the industry, in looking at the varieties as well as agricultural practices, and that information gets to the growers, to the farmers, who of course grow that product, and then it gets into the supply chain. There is a smaller part that goes through our farmers markets, and then of course the larger conventional supply chain is where that product goes through transformation, packaging, storage, then transport, and all the way then to retailing. And of course then at home cooking the product, as well as in cafeterias, in restaurants, to in various other locations, restaurants and so on. And in that process, there is, of course, also food loss and food waste, some of the topics that I will talk about. But these are the activities and actors, and they are several drivers that are involved here. Of course, there is the demographics in terms of the population. There is the socioeconomics related to income distribution for a certain location that has an impact on the system. There are socio-cultural, such as preferences. Those have impact on the system. And of course, through environment, we know the impact of climate change on these various activities. And then we have the outcomes. And those outcomes involve are again socioeconomic in terms of employment creation, food availability comes under the food security and nutrition aspects, and then again environment, where the system generates greenhouse gas emissions, and that impacts the environment. So looking at this food system, not only the environment impacts the food system, but the food system itself also impacts the environment. So there are a lot of interrelationships here going on, so that things get a little more complicated than just say farm to fork. This modern food and agriculture system is developed over the last 75 years, what we see in the grocery store today. In the early part of 20th century, there were famines around the globe, and millions of deaths linked to hunger and starvation and so on. So back in around 1950s time period, people started talking about improving productivity, looking at new crops and so on, new varieties. So Rockefeller Group and Ford Foundation got together, and there were these institutes that were set up around the globe for specific commodities, and notably CIMMYT, which is in Mexico City. That's where they worked on wheat and looking at the dwarf varieties. And similarly here in the Philippines, the International Rice Research Institute on rice. And Norman Borlaug, who was a wheat breeder, received the Nobel Prize for his work on dwarf wheat varieties. Dr. Cush, who is actually an alum of UC Davis, worked at the International Rice Research Institute and developed some of the rice varieties that are now grown all over Southeast Asia. And Phil Nelson, who at Purdue University, who developed the aseptic process, bulk aseptic process for preservation of foods. So a number of activities on hybrid varieties, post-harvest handling, processing, and of course developing the supply chains. And the result of that, you can see in this graph that had quite an increase in grain production. In the 1960s, from there, in terms of wheat, 5 times the production. In fact, I was a teenager in the state of Punjab in India when the grain revolution was going on, so I sort of firsthand recall some of the changes that were going on in the farms as the new varieties were brought in and the production increased. This increased productivity from hybrid varieties were very much reliant on chemicals, use of chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, and so on, and water. And some of these things we'll talk about a little bit later. So now our modern food and agriculture system is being impacted by multiple challenges. We have the increasing population and urbanization going on. There is, of course, the climate change. There's also degradation of natural resources. And then there are diet-related health diseases. All of those impacting and as challenges. But while there are challenges, there are also the opportunities that for us to address some of those. When we look at the population, I'm sure you have seen these types of data that by 2050 we are looking at 10 billion people. Well, that also means that we have to increase food production, meet that almost 60% gap between now and say 2050, not too far from now. And the question then, how to increase our food supply without using more fresh water and land? So a question for us. And also in this past 100 years or so, the greenhouse gas emissions have been increasing quite dramatically, and from methane to CO2 and nitrous oxide and so on. And agriculture is a major part of the global greenhouse gas emissions among the various economic sectors. Studies indicate about a quarter of the greenhouse gas emissions are because of agriculture, forestry, and land use. And of course, the impact of that, the greenhouse gas emissions, we can all feel it in terms of the increasing temperatures. And almost every month, every year, we are seeing records, the previous records being broken in terms of the land temperature, but also the seawater temperature. And that, again, for countries like New Zealand that are surrounded by water, increase of water temperature has a major impact. I was here just after the 2023 Cyclone Gabrielle, which, according to our former Prime Minister Hipkins, brought unprecedented floods. And you know that there was damage to a lot of infrastructure, but also a lot of produce. And the farmers here have the apples, and then also many of the fields that were inundated with water. So a lot of damage to the food supply, to the agricultural production. And of course, there are wildfires going on, not just in one part of the planet, but kind of spread all around from Australia to Siberia. And again, impact of that on our land in terms of producing food. Floods in various countries, and then multi-year droughts that have been again going on in various parts around the planet. In fact, those droughts have also led to issues like depletion of aquifers. So it's kind of troublesome because I've circled two regions. One is in California, where the aquifers had been going down, and that region is in fact very important in terms of agricultural production. And the same thing is happening in the Indo-Gangetic area, where again there is a serious depletion of aquifers, and that the region that grows a lot of food for the population there. Studies also indicate that the potential average yields of many of our cereal grains looking ahead is going to be actually going down quite, in some cases, quite significantly. So all these, what you see here, on one hand, we want to increase production to meet the demands of our increasing population, and on the other hand, with climate change and some of the impacts that we have actually a reduction in terms of what we can expect right now. So a couple of weeks ago was in London was the Climate Action Week, where I think about 40 or 50,000 people get together, and there were talks about climate change and so on. Jennifer Morgan, who's Germany's state secretary there, made a statement which I thought was quite appropriate. It says, there is no going back to a world before extreme weather events. There is no option to push pause, but we have the skills to shape a better, more resilient future. And that is the challenge for us, and opportunities then to look at the system and then see what we can do. So when it comes to mitigation and adaptation, as we move forward, we have the multiple goals for meeting food needs, sustained natural resources, as well as a healthy ecosystem. And for that, there are, again, if you look around the globe, there are many efforts going on, whether it's in the academia or in the industry, from issues like soil regeneration, plant-based foods, cellular agriculture, food loss, waste management. And I'm sure many who are online and many here are working in many of these areas, and certainly these are topics that we can talk in a lot more detail. But I thought that for this evening, maybe look more at the general structure of the food system and what opportunities may be there to see what things we can transform to address some of these goals. So if we look at our, again, modern food and agriculture system, it operates within a linear economy. And just to make sure everyone is familiar with the term, in a linear economy, the value of products, materials, and resources is maintained in the economy for a short period of time with substantial generation of waste. And this applies to all sectors, not only to food and agriculture, in all manufacturing sectors. And again, pictorially, it's you take stuff in terms of resources, and you make something, you use it for some time, and then you dispose it, which of course leads to waste and pollution. And perhaps this smartphone is a good example of that. That every 2-3 years you come up with a new software or hardware and so on, and then you're disposing it off. So that's a sort of a system is really not sustainable as we move ahead. And so if you look at the ag-food systems, again, number of parts of the supply chain generates a lot of food loss and waste. And that leads to degrading some of the natural resources, puts more pressure on the environment, and also contribute to the climate change. This is something where business as usual will not suffice. And so we have to look at other ways of doing this rather than being in a linear economy. So one thing we can do is look at nature. In case of nature, it's cyclical and always in constant motion. It is a system of living systems. So we have the water cycle. We have the carbon cycle, and these are cyclical. We have the nitrogen cycle. We have situations where one organism's waste is another organism's food, energy, and nutrients. So the system is operating with minimal or zero waste. And so that should provide us with an inspiration to look at how we may modify the way we have been doing some of our things more recently. So the question then comes up, what will it take to transform our throwaway economy into one where waste is eliminated, resources are circulated, and nature is regenerated? One of the ways would be a circular economy. Now, this is a term appeared just in the last 10 years or so. Ellen MacArthur Foundation has articulated this very well. They are promoting this, where circular economy is where the value of products, materials, and resources are then maintained in the economy as long as possible, and also with minimal generation of waste. And so the circular economy, as developed here, is to give us tools then to tackle climate change and biodiversity loss, together with addressing some of the important social needs. So there are certain principles of circularity that involve increasing the use efficiency. So imagine in the food processing plant, we want to improve the efficiency of the operations, not only from production standpoint, but also from the resource use standpoint. Design out the waste and pollution, so we recover the discarded waste and for productive uses. We keep products and materials in continued use as long as possible. And then we regenerate natural systems, and we provide economic benefits. That last part is also critical to realize this circularity in our operations and so on. As I showed before, our food and agricultural value chain, and then we have the socio-economic systems, and also we have the nature's ecosystems. So there are a lot of systems here, and so the new sort of level of thinking here is that we have systems of systems, and these are layered and they are interwoven. This is where many of the resources are interacting spatially and temporally, and continuously they loop forward and backward. As you can see, the complexity here increases. That also means then that we need multidisciplinary systems approaches. Okay, so a couple of words here, and then I'm going to emphasize those later on too. Systems is one. Our thinking has to be more about systems, because sometimes you may come up with a solution, but it may have unintended consequences somewhere else in the system. In that case, you have to take appropriate measures to make sure that you do not, cause a damage on some other part of the system. Within the National Academy, we have been involved in this for the last about 5 or 6 years. In 2021, we actually held a virtual forum on complex food and agricultural system engineering for sustainability and resilience. We had around 900 participants from around the globe, and I would encourage those who may be interested to look at some of the presentations and the discussion that went on there. Within the National Academy of Engineering, we also had a recent issue of The Bridge called Smart Agriculture, again focused on some of these topics related to circular bioeconomy. But the other one that I'm going to take the next remaining time to talk about is the effort that has been going on within a professional society, the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. They started an initiative on transforming food and agriculture into circular systems in 2020. I was part of that task force and have continued with some of the developments there that I thought might be of interest to some of you. We might ask why this particular society, and that's because the members of this society are indeed working on elements across the bioeconomy value chain and also the environment. So we have members from all those. So that gives us at least a starting point, to address some of these issues. And very recently, an institute has been set up within ASABE. It's the Circular Bioeconomy Systems Institute. There's a website address there. And again, I will encourage you to be a member of that, because we are really looking for global participation on many of these issues that are impacting through climate change and others. One of the activities that we recently completed was to hold some workshops to build a multidisciplinary stakeholder alliances. As you saw earlier, that this is not an issue that only one discipline can address, that we need to really have a multidisciplinary approach here for the circular systems. And again, with a question of what new knowledge, techniques, and skills are needed to transform into the circular bioeconomy systems. They were, in fact, just in the last 2 months, there were 9 workshops that were held, and you can see from the topics that they cover various aspects of the food and agriculture system, from farm production to controlled environment to urban agriculture to animal production and the food processing and waste side, which I was myself involved in. We had over 300 participants for these workshops, and there will be a summit in spring of 2025, again, for those who may be interested in this. So I'll briefly talk about some of the discussion that went on in the food processing and waste workshop last month in Chicago. We had participants from the food industry, spread from multinationals to small and medium enterprises, as well as people from academia, government, NGOs, trade organizations, and consultants. So we had quite a broad, participant expertise available to discuss. Not only have some short plenary talks, but most of the time was on brainstorming topics that are related to food processing as well as waste through the chain. A white paper is being prepared. I think there were over 100 plus ideas and topics that came up. I thought that maybe it will be of interest here to maybe look at just 2-3 items from each one of those 5 themes that were discussed. First relates to food processing. This is the more of the food manufacturing side with the food, energy, water nexus. We had a topic on upcycled foods, so a group looking at that in more detail. Food packaging, food losses and waste at the retail level, and then food waste at the consumer level. So just briefly talk about these, and also I'll mention maybe 2-3 case studies, examples from our own research. So in case of food manufacturing, one of the items that came up from those who were especially coming from the industry is that there is a lack of usable data on specific unit operations. These are the processes that are carried out in the plant. We don't have very good information on specific water and energy requirements that are needed to enable better sizing, matching for processes. So there's a need to develop this type of information, better quantitative data. There is also lack of decision-making tools for the operators. It was suggested that we should develop some open source information so that it's available to also small and medium enterprises. And then to leverage what's going on, I'm sure most of you have heard and or maybe working in this, is in artificial intelligence, in machine learning, and digital twins for optimizing and improving our processes, and especially from energy and some of the other resource use. Just a side note there, in fact, many of us food engineers around the globe have been working on computational modeling of food processes. This just shows one example of a study that we did a few years ago on impingement ovens that are used in the industry. Most of that computational work was largely to design a piece of equipment. It didn't really get into manufacturing stage at that time. But we do have all those models and currently being developed. And now with the advances that are taking place in the technology world, there's an opportunity not only to run the simulations on our computers, but also to link it with real data coming from the plant so that you can now run these pieces of equipment in the industry in the most efficient way, and again, trying to cut down the waste, the losses, the energy requirements, and water, and so on. And another item was on food processing is the water recovery, filtration, and reuse. And again, a lot of our equipment that has been designed in the food industry that's used in food manufacturing was designed in the era of plentiful energy and water. Those were not the constraints that the engineer had when you were designing a piece of equipment. Most often it was the production efficiency and so on. So now with the the emphasis on trying to cut down the water use and the energy use, we have to look at ways of how we can retrofit or design newer equipment. For example, it's quite typical in a food processing plant to have the floor drains where water, after it's used in a piece of equipment, goes down in the drain, everything gets mixed, and then you have a problems with handling that wastewater. So there's no reason why we cannot go to the individual processing equipment from where the water is discharging, look at what is in there and recover some of the, if there are chemicals used for cleaning and so on, those can be recovered. There are solids, food solids, those can be recovered, and water can be cleaned and reused within the piece of equipment. So we have those technologies and we can put it together. But again, these are things to evaluate not only from technology standpoint, but also from economic standpoint and opportunities to improve on. Okay, and then the last item on food processing group was to look for decarbonizing processing operations. And a lot of new developments that are taking place in this arena, in fact, are based on use of electricity, and that is from then renewable side. So high pressure processing, pulse electric field, the work that's going on here in the University of Otago, microwave sterilization, ohmic heating, these are all electric-based technologies that are coming around. And so opportunities for us to decarbonize our food processing. Again, I know that many around the globe are working in these, and I think there are, again, great opportunities to make impact, really a major impact in the future. Okay, upcycled foods. And here, we really need to do a paradigm change because a lot of raw material, in fact, even upon harvest, gets rejected just based on aesthetics. We walk into the grocery store and we really want to see that perfectly shaped apple or orange or, your tomato. But not every tomato on the plant is going to have that aesthetic value. And unfortunately, that's where there is a considerable loss and so on. So in upcycled foods, again, to be successful, a lot of these innovations will need to be tied to the value proposition. So that aspect is going to be important. We need some clear metrics to validate the impact of upcycled foods, life cost analysis and so on. And we also need that information go to the innovators as well as the small scale producers. So there's a more widespread availability of that information. The other thing about upcycled food is that many times we have streams coming out, side streams, but the amount is not enough to put in large capital expenditure on that. So many times matching producers to potential users can assist, but also creating waste cooperatives for co-located industries. Those are ways that we can have a sufficient scale of operation so that what can make that kind of capital expenditure for that. Now, food packaging, again, is an area important. And here, again, one of the suggestion is about bulk food should be made more widely available to reduce the primary packaging, but also accounting there the consumer needs for times for shopping, as well as meal preparation, food safety, and so on. The other aspect was that most of the packages are designed, it's just the same design, regardless of where that product is going, where it's being shipped, whether it's within the same region or going out to another country or whatever. But package design should be based on the final location of that food consumption. Can that package be recycled at that location? Do they have the local infrastructure to recycle, for example, that package? Is it easier for consumers to recycle at that location and use that information in terms of design of the package for that product going for that particular market? So these are some of the ideas being talked about. Of course, we want to prioritize in case of packaging, first reduce, then reuse, then recycle. And along with that, there is again a number of people working in the area of intelligent and smart packages, time temperature sensors. We ourselves worked in this field almost, I would say, almost 35, 40 years ago. And this was on time temperature indicators. I had a project with the US Army. We were looking at shipment of foods long distance, ensuring that when those packages are opened, that the product has not gone through any type of heat abuse, which can cause quality deterioration. And out of that project came result was some of these indicators. And in case of all the shipment for US Army, all the meals ready to eat, they are in fact using these indicators now for that particular purpose. They haven't come to that much to the civilian use, largely because of the cost issue. And at this point at least. So we'll see how things move in the future. But there is another application that we, in fact, one of my PhD students published papers on that, and I can show you that let's say that if you have a fruit shipment from New Zealand going to Los Angeles, and then within the shipment there is part of it that has gone through some sort of heat abuse, let's say the port or in the ship itself, and now that particular consignment needs to move faster because it does not have as much shelf life in it. And so if you had an opportunity where a product is perfectly fine, that can go to the market, say in New York, but if the other product doesn't have as much shelf life, could go to, say, a market in Seattle. But you need that. You need that quantitative information, and these types of time temperature indicators can provide that. Again, it's nice to see now companies that are beginning to offer this opportunity, also connected to the cloud, so that you're getting real-time data on these shipments, and the decisions are being made based on the remaining shelf life of the product. So you minimize the wastage and you provide improved quality for the consumer. So it took a few years, but it's being used. Then the fourth item was on the retail side, our grocery stores and the food waste there. Again, there is a need to standardize some of the data reporting on this to enable more transparency in this. And there are now companies, groups like Refed, that are offering that type of service, and it's going to be needed. There is a certain amount of confidentiality and information that needs to be protected and within these various retail businesses. But what we see here is that when it comes to food waste, this is something where a collaboration can be pre-competitive. And where one can share successes and failures and help create that trust within different companies that are involved. And there are mechanisms to anonymize the data so that we can improve on that. Also, like in California now, there is a total ban on food waste going from the retail stores to landfills. It requires that food waste to be directed either for donations or to a organic waste processing facility, but not to the landfill. And also smartphone apps, for example, being developed to advise the consumer about the availability of surplus food. Albertsons, which is one of our largest chains, just signed up with Uber for this type of service, providing that situations where there is food available and that may have passed, say, its shelf life date or coming close to its shelf life date, that is available then for consumption. And then the last one here is the consumer level food waste. This is where one of the things we find is that we need an improved understanding of the extent of the problem. We don't have that yet. And there is actually a major project that funded by the National Science Foundation involving several universities where they are collecting that information from across the United States right now to understand better in terms of in-home food waste at various stages and develop measurement standards there. There's also, in case of consumer level food waste, is what you can learn from local communities, from different cultural backgrounds. So a lot of this is more sort of local solutions, community-led strategies, and so on in trying to cut down consumer level food waste. And of course, there's a need for consumer education about these best by dates and food safety and how one may handle foods based on that information. There's a lot of education that needs to be taken care of in this particular case. And also related to food waste education, of course, use social media, but also one of the things that came up in this workshop was that educate children on food waste, that many times that can influence the household behavior through that route. Okay, now I think I'm getting out of my time. This is the last slide. I will be remiss if I don't note a report that just came out last week, I believe, here from the Prime Minister's the science advisor, chief scientific officer, about preventing food loss and waste in New Zealand. I have glanced through it. It's a very comprehensive report and really got some great ideas. I'm in fact going to take and share it with some of my colleagues there. But again, those who may be interested more on the food loss and waste, this report is available online. So a reference for you. Okay, so as I summarize, for a sustainable circular bioeconomy system that is producing safe, affordable, nutritious, and plentiful food, these are some of the things that we need to think about for future. One is systems thinking, and jointly work towards these complex system solutions. The innovations we create, they have to be in harmony with not only the technical side, but the policy and socioeconomic perspectives. We need to partner across disciplines and professions because, as you have seen in some of the previous slides, because of the complexities and that we must address those various disciplines. And then we need to also develop and use metrics to continually assess our progress then towards circularity. So as we frame our future food system, these are some of the ideas that have come through these workshops and discussions that we have had, and I thought that they might be of interest here. So with that, I thank you for your attention.